All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome one and all to the very first episode of Meet a Geek, a small show by Omar Kimbaya that's all about meeting your fellow geek at Geekdom. Today I have a great pleasure of speaking with Brian Sierakowski. He is the CEO of TeamPassword and the Director of Product at Jungle Disc. How you doing, Brian?
I'm great. Thanks so much for having me, Omar.
Excellent. So first question right off the bat, who are you?
I mean, I think you kind of just did it there. And I'm the founder of TeamPassword, who was sold to Jungle Disc, and now I'm there as their Director of Product.
Sweet. So what do you do as Director of Product at Jungle Disc and the CEO of TeamPassword?
Sure. Yeah, it's a great question.
It's a big
I ask
question.
myself that
It's
every single day. Yeah, I feel like, my background's product management, and I feel like that's kind of like one of those like universally like soft roles where like how exactly do you define what you do? It's like, I mean, at a very high level, it's like what's on the roadmap, and what are we doing, and how are we kind of communicating what our customers want and need to the development team, and make sure that, at least from my perspective, making sure that that's wrapped in the right marketing and sales message. Obviously, my background is being a CEO. I maybe expand my role bigger than it should be, but kind of sort of I view very selfishly product as being in the dead center of an organization, and everything kind of radiates out from there.
All right, excellent. So third question, why did you become a Geekdom member?
I guess I became one by default because Jungle Disc is a corporate member. So I showed up and I was a member, which was really great because when I sold TeamPassword to Jungle Disc, I came to San Antonio as well, totally new to the area. So it was really cool to kind of like sort of, I don't know, I'm sort of like naturally pretty introverted in my way of like interacting with other humans. So it was cool to be sort of like opted into the thing, like, oh yeah, like, well, this thing's free, where you like go and talk to other people and go to events and stuff like that. So I was forced into it, but like in like the coolest possible way.
Very cool. All right, so I'm going to flip some of the questions around. So what value have you gotten from Geekdom, just being a member here?
Yeah, I think it's kind of the direct value has been I think mainly the events for me, and kind of the educational component. TeamPassword started at a startup weekend, so it was really cool that Geekdom hosted a startup weekend, and I got to go and meet some really cool people. I was on the team, although I didn't really contribute at all. It's just kind of I just went there to hang out, and I wound up sort of joining a team and not really contributing. But the pitch was
guy in the group project that like he gets all the credit but didn't do anything.
Yeah,
Way to go.
I hope I didn't even. Yeah, I hope I didn't even get any credit. But yeah, it was like the pitch was this guy Mel, which people maybe he should be on a future episode. But his pitch was 3D printers printing 3D printers, and I was like,
what?
Yeah, that's too cool. Like, yeah, it doesn't. First off, that doesn't make any sense. And
so
second of all, yeah, exactly. So, so that's just like an anecdote of like, that was all facilitated directly through being at Geekdom. I think also for me, I started TeamPassword like, I guess it's been like 9 years ago at this point. So I've been sort of away from the early stage entrepreneurship mindset, but I feel like that's kind of very much a part of me. So it's kind of cool, even just in the Geekdom Slack, to see people raising their first round or launching their product for the first time. I don't know, I just kind of like, I like being around that energy.
Yeah.
And I think that one of the things I tell myself periodically is like, yeah, I should like do a better job of making, like, availing myself as a mentor to the community. Although I've only made it so far. Like, I can only get you to, I've only sold like one company, and like, I'm not a like I'm not like a multi-millionaire or anything like that. But yeah, I kind of feel like whenever I see that stuff, I'm like, man, I should really get more involved and at least give people some of the mistakes that I've made. But that to me, it's also like very much a benefit of being in the community. You kind of get to see people do stuff. It's exciting. And I think like having the opportunity to help other people is like a part of the benefit too. So it feels good. And like anything in 2020 you can do to feel good about yourself is like, like it's worth its weight in gold.
Tell me about it. All right. So let's, last question for today and for this episode is going to be, what problems keep you up at night?
Oh, I sleep very well. I'm always making. Is it Joe in the Slack who's always like grinding, and it's like 3 a.m. in the morning, 3:30, and I'm like
3 and 4 a.m. He's like, hey
yeah, I'm
guys,
like
I'm grinding right now.
yeah, and I'm like dead asleep. Yeah, I mean, if we extrapolate the question of like what things am I worried about, or what do I have my mind on? I think it's always I mean, especially from the cons or from the framing of being inside of JungleDis. It's a company, and really TeamPassword too, companies that are selling like relative like web utilities. Like having a backup for your files is important. And same thing like having safe passwords and not reusing passwords and being able to share them in your team responsibly. These are like, yeah, but these are like the like this is like the internet version of like flossing. Like, so nice. I'm always thinking from the, it's like good hygiene stuff. So I'm always thinking of like, well, what can we do to like help companies protect themselves, and also kind of keeping an eye out for like, what are those like, those features that nobody's ever going to tell you that they want, but things that can truly be like a differentiator. And then when I find one of those things, how do we move towards it in such a way that, you know, if it's going to cost us like $5 million in development costs to get there, then that's like, that's not a great, like, all right, you know, it's going to cost us $5 million and maybe we'll make some money when we get there. So that's kind of like, that's kind of what consumes me, of like finding that right pipeline of like being able to talk to our current happy customers, talk to our current angry customers, do surveys, do user studies, and like compile that all into like, well, what's like the future of the product going to be? What can we do? Like, it's backup. I'll be the first to say it's not like a super exciting, cool, you know, field, but it's like hyper important. And like, you know, there's obviously a lot of money there too. So like, what could we be doing? And like, how could we like reframe backup in such a way of like, oh, well, that's actually sounds useful to me. And like, that's kind of like the thing with TeamPassword of like, oh, well, oh, that's like password management. That's boring. And like, oh, well, you know, that thing where someone bothers you of like, hey, what's the password to this? Like, we can eliminate that problem for you. Yeah. Like, it's just like all the shared knowledge of passwords within your company are in the same place. So those are the types of things that I think about. But again, I sleep very soundly. I sleep like a rock. Getting to bed before 10 every night. Fall asleep very quickly. It's great. So what keeps me up at night? Nothing. Unless I'm like playing video games or something like that. And that's
always I
don't think that's the answer you were looking for. Yeah.
It's always a kicker. All right, cool. All right, flash question. This is going to be like the end all be all question that y'all need to know. All right, suggest, this is more like not really a question, it's more like a statement, but suggest a
flash
way.
Statement.
Yeah, flash statement. Suggest a way to give back to the community for anybody who's watching. What are some things they can do to give back to the Geekdom community?
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, and I was sort of like reminiscing or ruminating on that earlier. I think that, and maybe I'll frame my thought as like a statement. Everything's a statement now. It's 2020. I think everybody has like expertise in a certain area. And I think like making yourself available to give that expertise, and like, it's kind of hard to like, it's hard for people to ask for people's help on stuff. And then like, there's always that thing of like, when you're trying to offer your services, like you're like, well, let me know if there's anything I can do to help. And like the other person says, okay. And then like sure. End of conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So I would sort of, obviously I haven't thought of this because earlier I said I already outed myself that I have not figured this out yet. But I think that would be the thing to think about. It's like, well, what is the thing that I have expertise in, and like, what's the best way for me to go about sharing that? Or even if it's just like you've run into problems that you've solved and you can save someone else's time in the community. Like that's how, like if we were all to sort of like upload our consciousness up to like one centralized like Geekdom AI, like we would have all this like training data. Yeah, hold on, slow down. Like we would have all these different cases. Like we'd be so much stronger and better because the number of problems that we've collectively seen as a community and the things that we've solved and accomplished are so much greater. You know, kind of like the sum of the parts type situation. So that would be where I'm thinking, and that's where I think other people should think of like, well, even if you're just starting on your career, I mean, maybe you've just become a software developer, and you're like on day 2 of the job. It's like, well, you could tell other people how you got a job as a software developer, or you can sort of share that information. Maybe there's something you can do there.
True that.
So everybody has something to share, and I think like figuring out the right way to present that, so it's not like, because I could be like, hey, I'm Brian, I sold a company, like, let me help you, and then everybody be like, thanks, and then like I wouldn't hear from anybody. So you have to kind of find a way to craft that information,
Right.
and make it like accessible. You have to form the product of your history, of your experience, and you have to find a way to find product market fit with the. I don't know what I'm doing. Sorry. This flash statement has got me totally off.
Flash statement.
Kilter.
Well, I think that'd be a really good resource for people to use the Geekdom forum for. Like, just like post like, this is what I'm good at. These are things I like talking about. So if you want to learn those things, holla at your boy, right? Like that's what we'd want people to do. All right.
Yeah, if we could develop a culture of like people talking more about the things that they're struggling on, kind of like if you go to like a Vistage meeting or like issue process, it's hard to do that in public, like too public, like a forum, be like, here's all the things I suck at. But I don't know. So if we could find, I think there's a thread there that we can go down the path of that, kind of, if we think of Geekdom as like a collective brain, like we have probably the answer at this point. I don't know if we include like Graham Weston in that group. We have the answer to every business problem that's ever existed. So, nobody in the community should be struggling for too long on any individual business problem or question.
Yeah, that's the real value of having a community here. But without staying too long, I'd love to play our outro music and say goodbye. So this was Meet a Geek. Brian, thank you so much for joining. And if you're interested in being a part of this, please reach out on Slack. I am Omar Kimbaya on Slack. It's pretty easy. But one last thing, always remember to be helpful.